Let me ask you something. Have you ever met a man who truly understands himself? Because here's the strange thing. Most men don't. And yet, many of them walk around thinking they understand women. It's almost ironic, isn't it? They believe they can read the heart of a woman, decode her thoughts, and predict her needs. But all the while, they remain strangers to their own inner world. They haven't looked deeply into their own emotional reflection. They haven't dared to hold up the mirror long enough to see what's really there. And that's where the trouble begins. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't about blaming men or making anyone feel small. It's about waking up to a deeper truth that most people avoid their whole lives. You see, Plato never wrote a book on love or dating. He didn't offer any quick tricks to win affection. But what he did do was uncover something far more powerful. The patterns of the mind, the prison of illusion, and how easily we confuse shadow for substance. Most men, without realizing it, fall in love not with a woman, but with a fantasy of her, an idea, a projection, a sweet story born from longing, not truth. And when that fantasy eventually breaks, when reality doesn't match the dream, many men feel betrayed. But the betrayal was never real. It was their own illusion that collapsed. So before we point fingers at women, before we say she changed, or she's the problem, we have to ask a more courageous question. What if the woman was never the problem? What if the real issue lies in the illusion we build around her? This is where we begin, not with blame, but with brutal, liberating honesty. Not with how to understand women, but with the mirror we've avoided for too long. Let's go deeper. Do you remember Plato's allegory of the cave? He told the story of prisoners chained in a dark cave, watching shadows flicker on the wall, believing those shadows were the only reality that existed. They had never seen the outside world. They had never looked directly into the light. And so, to them, the shadows were truth. Now think about that in the context of love, especially for men. Many men are stuck in a cave of emotional misunderstanding. They don't truly see women. They see projections of what they want women to be. The kind smile that reminds them of their mother. The comforting presence that makes them feel safe. The mysterious beauty that distracts them from their own pain. But the truth is, those aren't women. They are shadows cast by the fire of our own unmet needs. When a man says, "She's everything I've ever wanted," what he might really be saying is, "She reflects the image I've been holding in my mind." And the moment she steps out of that shadow, when she shows complexity, emotions, independence, he recoils. He feels disillusioned. He calls it losing love. But in truth, he never loved the real woman to begin with. He loved the idea of her, the version that existed in his cave. So let's be clear. Women are not the enemy. They're not manipulators or saviors or prizes to be won. They are mirrors, reflecting back to men the parts of themselves they've ignored. What anger do you feel when she doesn't behave as you expect? That's the shadow breaking. What disappointment do you feel when she wants something different? That's your illusion dissolving. And yes, it hurts, but it's also the beginning of real freedom. Because the cave isn't meant to be a forever home. It's a place we all begin, but not where we're meant to stay. True love doesn't live in shadows. It lives in the light, where both man and woman can be fully seen, not as ideas, but as souls. And that journey starts the moment a man dares to leave the cave, not to chase a woman, but to meet himself. Let's talk about the most dangerous kind of deception. It's not the lies someone tells you. It's the ones you tell yourself. Because here's the truth. The worst kind of betrayal is self-betrayal. And in love, men do this all the time without even knowing it. A man falls for a woman, and he swears she's perfect. He says, "She's not like the others. She understands me. She would never hurt me." But what he doesn't realize is this. He's not describing her. He's describing his own dream of her. A dream built on hope, fear, and a deep longing to feel whole. This is self-deception. And it's not love. It's a projection. You see, blind love isn't love at all. It's just a result of an untrained mind, a mind that hasn't yet learned to sit still, to question, to observe its own patterns. And here's the hardest part for many men to accept. Women don't have to lie to you. They simply reflect back the weakness already living inside you. That's why the same woman can feel like a goddess to one man and a curse on another. It's not about her. It's about what she reveals. If you see her strength and feel threatened, that's your insecurity. If you see her beauty and try to possess it, that's your fear of loss. If you love her only when she submits, that's not love, it's control. So let's stop blaming women for our emotional confusion. The truth is, the enemy isn't out there. He's in here, in the mind that hasn't been trained, in the heart that hasn't healed. Until a man confronts his own illusions, he will always be chasing shadows and calling it love. There's an ancient metaphor that speaks directly to this struggle. It's called the chariot of the soul. Picture this. Your soul is a chariot. It's pulled by two horses. One is reason, the other is desire. And you, the driver, must learn to guide both. Reason pulls you toward wisdom, patience, and understanding. Desire pulls you toward passion, temptation, and intensity. Now, neither horse is bad, but when desire takes over the reins, the chariot crashes. And that's exactly what happens to so many men in love. They meet a woman, and something awakens in them, something wild. She touches a part of their spirit that had been asleep. She stirs the fire in their blood. She awakens the untamed horse. And suddenly, reason is no longer in control. Desire is running the show. They stop thinking clearly. They chase what they crave. They ignore the signs, the red flags, the warnings from their own intuition. They confuse intensity with truth. They call obsession soul connection. And they believe surrendering to lust is the same as falling in love. But here's the truth. Uncontrolled love is not freedom. It's spiritual slavery. When desire rides unchecked, it doesn't lead you toward union. It leads you toward collapse. So what's the lesson? A man must learn to hold the reins of his own soul, to know when to let desire gallop and when to rein it in, to love deeply, yes, but not blindly, to feel passion, but not become his prisoner. Because love, at its highest form, isn't a storm, it's a sanctuary. And no sanctuary can be built when the wild horse is dragging the chariot off the cliff. Let's be honest. Some men lose everything for a woman they barely know. They abandon their families. They burn years of hard-earned success. They fall into depression and even take their own lives. And all because of a look, a moment, a fantasy. You see, no one talks about the silent epidemic of men worshiping an illusion, putting a woman on a pedestal so high he forgets who he is. He trades his integrity for a kiss, his purpose for approval, his soul for the illusion of love. But here's the truth. The collapse doesn't come from a woman. It comes from within. It comes when a man chooses to live from the lower part of his soul, the part ruled by impulse, weakness, and emotional dependency. When a man chases validation instead of truth, when he bows to desire instead of walking with dignity, he commits a spiritual crime, not against her, against himself. This kind of betrayal isn't loud. It doesn't scream in the streets. It whispers in the quiet moments, when he looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize who he's become, when his soul says, "You knew better, but you chose blindness." So no, the real danger isn't her beauty. It's your blindness to what it triggers in you. Because the moment you idolize someone, you lose the power to love them truthfully, and you lose the power to love yourself with honor. Let's shift the lens now, because this journey isn't about women. It's about you. The woman you say manipulated you, she was just a mirror, a reflection of what was already inside your soul. If she played with your emotions, maybe it's because your emotions were already unstable. If she walked all over your boundaries, maybe it's because you never learned how to hold them in the first place. This is not about blaming yourself. It's about taking your power back. Because true power isn't control over women. It's sovereignty over yourself. If you don't rule your own mind, your desires, your emotions, then everything out there will rule you, not just her. Your cravings, your loneliness, your need for attention, your fear of being alone. That's not her fault. That's yours to face. Because no one can manipulate you unless you've already abandoned your own inner throne. A woman can't play you unless you're already playing yourself. This is a shift. This is where men awaken. The moment you stop pointing fingers and start facing the man in the mirror, the one who's been waiting not to fight women, but to master himself. That's where your freedom begins. That's where love stops being a battlefield and becomes a path to wisdom. Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, it's never enough? You dress well, you get the job, you play the part, you try to be the man she dreams of, and still there's this emptiness. You chase compliments like a man crawling to the desert, begging for a drop of water. One smile from her, and you feel alive. One cold glance, and your whole world falls apart. But why? Because society has fed you a lie since birth, that she is your better half, that without her you are incomplete, that her approval gives you value. But let me tell you the truth, brother. You were never broken. You were never half a soul looking for completion. If you live for her validation, you will forever be thirsty. You'll drink illusion after illusion and never feel full. The man who needs to be seen, the man who lives for applause, will always be a prisoner in someone else's palace. True freedom begins when you stop needing their eyes to feel whole, when you no longer shrink or stretch yourself for attention, when you find worth not in her gaze, but in your own reflection. That's when the desert ends. That's when you come home to yourself. So what does it mean to be a real man? Not in the shallow way the world defines it, through muscles, money, or women, but in the deeper way, the way ancient wisdom once taught us. Plato called it the philosopher king, a man who thinks clearly, a man who sees beyond appearances, a man who leads, not others first, but himself. He doesn't need a woman to submit to him, because he's already surrendered to his own truth. He doesn't chase control over others, because he's mastered the wild horses within, his lust, his anger, his fear. When such a man stands in front of a woman, he doesn't try to overpower her. He doesn't fall under her spell either. He sees clearly. He listens without losing himself. He loves without clinging. And if she tests him, which she will, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't chase. He simply remains steady, because he's not trying to win her. He's not trying to escape his loneliness through her. He already knows who he is, with or without her. That is a man, a philosopher, a king, a ruler of his own soul. And when a man becomes that, he doesn't fear women. He honors them, but never at the cost of himself. The way out, it was never about running from women. It was never about blaming them, fearing them, or avoiding love altogether. The real path is learning to look straight into your own soul and not flinch. Every illusion you break, every fantasy you burn down, it is one step out of the cave, one step closer to light. And yes, the truth will hurt. It will scorch your pride. It will burn the parts of you that were built on lies. But that fire is sacred, because only through that fire can your soul be forged. So choose the light, even if it blinds you at first, even if it strips you bare, because that light is love, not the kind that begs to be wanted, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are without anyone else's permission. This is the beginning of true freedom. Not freedom from women, but freedom from the chains you wrapped around your own heart. And now, you have a choice. Will you go back to sleep, or will you walk into the fire and let the man you were meant to be finally rise? If this message stirred something inside you, don't just listen. Live it. Take a moment. Breathe. Reflect. And when you're ready, share this with another man who needs to remember who he truly is. Not for attention, not for likes, but because truth, real truth, spreads heart to heart. And that is how we rise. Together,